Good evening. Welcome to this week's program. My name is Catherine Minyuki. Tonight on the program, we are going to preview the midterm statement that is going to be unveiled by the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtuli Ncube, at the end of this month. And to discuss that with me is a familiar face of this program, Mr. Eddie Cross. Mr. Cross, good evening.
Hi, Guthrie. Good to be back.
Yeah. You know, winter is always problematic in that it brings a lot of cold, but also we tend to gain weight. I'm realizing that you've gained a bit of pounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your cheeks, they look big.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's
okay.
happening? Are you having too many pancakes at home?
Traveling.
Traveling?
Traveling hotels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know the feeling. It
Yeah.
can be really disastrous to your wellness program, I know.
that's right.
Sure. Mr. Cross, first things first. July 30, the Minister of Finance is going to present his midterm statement. And he has already given the Daily News a sneak peek into that statement. And we wrote a story earlier this week where you are saying that he's going to look at the issue of the many taxes that we have. Do you believe that the minister can be able to cut taxes and still increase government revenue?
Yes, I think that is possible. I think the minister, I would hate his job right now. I would not like to be in his shoes. He's got a very difficult task at the end of this month. The economy is not growing fast enough to really overcome the structural difficulties in our fiscal arrangements. And he is having difficulty matching expenditure with income. So in other words, he needs more money. And many of the expenditures that he's committed to are recurrent. In other words, they're not optional. You can't play around with them. You actually have to meet those. And his discretionary expenditure is fairly limited. It's more limited than it was a couple of years ago. So he's got a very difficult budget to produce, to balance it. And I would hope that he's going to tackle. He has talked about tackling the duplicity of taxes. I said once in a public gathering a year ago that we are most heavily taxed people on earth, and that there are over 50 taxes compared to 7 primary taxes in South Africa. And I saw the Commissioner of Taxes about 3 weeks later on dealing with the problem, and she laughed at me and said, "Eddie, it's not 50, it's 92. And since then, I've been given a list of taxes, and Chisano, who's responsible for finances in the party, he said to me a couple of weeks ago...
Chinamasa.
Chinamasa. He said he's got 102 on his list. So there's no doubt about it that we suffer from a plethora of taxes. And I think he needs to tackle that. For me, the most important single issue he's got to address is that the tax threshold starts too low. To tax a man or a woman who earns $100 a month, 20% tax, is just, to me, iniquitous. Absolutely iniquitous. The tax threshold should be much higher. It certainly should be above the poverty datum line. And at present, it's not. And I would, if I was Minister of Finance, I would certainly put the tax threshold at about $2,000 a month, not less. And that would immediately improve the living standards of the people at the bottom of the pile. It would also increase discretionary expenditure for individuals and therefore boost consumer spending. And that would boost the economy, boost industry, agriculture. It would help us throughout the agricultural sector. And you got the 80-20 situation. 80% of taxes comes from the top 20%. And 20% comes from the bottom 80%. And this would not have a terrific impact on the broader tax revenues that were going to government. But it would really, really substantially help the majority of the lower income taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got to review our top levels. Mm-hmm. You know, the evidence of people with wealth in this country is everywhere. You look at the houses people are building. Look at the cars people are driving. Look at the discretion. Emirates from Harare to Dubai is full every evening, 500 passengers. And you know, these are signs of wealth. And these people with wealth must start contributing more. And we must find a way to do that. You know, we talked about many ways of doing that, of looking at how they're living and whether it's justified by their salaries and so on.
Sure. You know, what you're saying is so critical because it stirs a lot of debate. I'm sure if you were to start at $2,000, that takes a threshold. Obviously, you'll have so many people giving a thumbs up. But again, you also bring in the issue of wealth. So, in other words, should you go for those who are wealthy and increase more taxes on those people?
Of course, yes.
Like what?
I think the wealth tax, I mean, if someone's earning more than $20,000 a month, and there are many, we mustn't think that's a fortune. It's not. Those individuals should be paying 60-70% of their incomes as tax. And because you can live in this country very comfortably on less than $2,000 a month. You can't live like a king, but you can pay your bills, put your kids through school. It really is an adequate level of basic living. And you know, the Gini coefficient for South Africa and places like Zimbabwe, this is the measure of the inequality of income, is the highest in the world. It's the highest in the world. And that is wrong. In a developing country, that's wrong. I think also, I think the government is not collecting the amount of tax that it should be collecting in key areas.
We will need to go there, because I'll need to give you a lot of time to explain that.
Yeah.
Because that is a very topical issue at the moment.
Yeah.
But obviously, the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority would have something to say about that. Okay?
Sure.
Please join us in the second segment as we discuss the upcoming mid-term budget statement by the Minister of Finance, Prof. Ntuli, at the end of this month. Welcome back. Tonight we are with Mr. Eddie Cross, renowned economist and former member of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Monetary Policy Committee. And with Mr. Cross, we are discussing the midterm statement which is going to be unveiled by the Minister of Finance, Professor Ntuli, at the end of this month. Mr. Cross, you were raising the issue that is actually contributing perhaps to the squeeze that everyone is going through. You're saying that the government is not collecting most of its revenues in critical areas. Which are these areas?
Right. Well, take motor vehicles for one. Okay? We import about $2 billion worth of motor vehicles a year. Second-hand, new. It's our largest single, it comes second to fuel, but it's enormous. If we applied our taxes, when I imported a car last year from Japan, I paid 100% duty in US dollars for that vehicle. But the total tax collected on vehicle imports here is tiny. It's tiny. If you import $2 billion worth of motor vehicles, you should be collecting $1 billion, $1.2 billion in tax. You're not. You're collecting $200 or $300 million. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. We import about $9 billion a year through the borders. These are of everything: fuel, goods and so on, food. So, The total amount of tax paid on imports in 2024 was less than $500 million. The World Bank says that we should be paying 13% of our total import bill in tax. That's what they've worked out. If you applied the tax on each of these items properly, that's what you should collect. Well, 13% of $8 billion. Do the mathematics. It's another $1 billion. It's double. It's double what we achieved last year. And then the third item. You see, we've got a few motor cars on the road. Our number of motor vehicles on the road in Zimbabwe has at least doubled in the last 3 years. And yet the official estimate of fuel imports has actually gone down. What's going on? I'm telling you, I don't know how they're doing it, but there is a huge leakage of revenue on fuel. The fuel tax is 52 cents a litre. So when you go to a pump and you pay the guy $100 for fuel, 42 cents of that, every litre, is going into the tax department. Now, if we are importing, the official figure is about 1.8 billion. I don't believe that. I think it's more like 3.2. If we're importing 3.2 billion litres of fuel a year, and I think that's real, 52 cents a litre, that is more than the education budget. And we're not collecting it. And the minister calls that a leakage.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a critical area, because it's not that we aren't paying the duty. We, me, you, we're paying the duty at the pump, but it's not being collected.
Okay. So obviously, somebody called me, I'm an absolute gentleman, when I was in Victoria Falls 2 weeks ago. So I'm not going to then discard my tag of being an absolute gentleman. I think I'm also an absolute professional. So I'm not going to discuss other people who are not here. But, Mr. Cross, is it because we don't have the capacity, we don't have the manpower, we don't have people who are qualified to collect the money? What is it? Those taxes that you're talking about.
When you have, and it is corruption, when you have corruption on this scale, I mean, this is not pocket money. Our budget is about $7 billion. I said to the president several months ago that corruption in this country might exceed the total value of the budget. And I tell you this, we could expand expenditure on education. We could maybe double the education budget. We could expand the expenditure on health and not increase taxes at all if we dealt with these leakages. Unfortunately, in business, I had a factory once where I knew the staff, about 500 staff, were stealing something from the factory. But I couldn't, and they were tight. They were really working together. So eventually, I succeeded in finding out what they were doing. And I brought the Minister of Labour in, and I walked into the boardroom where I had the 35 worker committees members around the table. And I put a bag of money on the table in front of the minister. And I said to him, these people are stealing that from this factory every month, every day. Every member of that workers' committee just put their heads down. It was true. And they were working together, from the accountant to the cleaner. And they were collecting this money every day, and they were paying out pro rata to their salaries. Very sophisticated. That's what's happening here. One of the most prized positions in Zimbabwe is a customs officer at a border post.
They signed the integrity pledges this week.
You know what that means. You know what that means.
So they are men and women of integrity.
Guthrie, you've got to, I have a runner who comes to my house once a week. You know what a runner is?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big Mercedes vehicle. I don't know how he does it. He delivers stuff to my house for distribution.
Sort of a Malaysia.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said to him, how do you get through the border? He said, Wabadara. Just one word, Wabadara.
All right.
Occasionally he gets stopped. Occasionally they get detained. But after some while, a deal is done and they are allowed through. And, this has got to stop. This has got to stop.
It's got to stop.
And there are two things we can do.
Yeah.
One is punish those.
Let's talk about that in the final segment.
Okay.
I would like to give you enough time to make sure that you deal with this cough.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Please join us in the final segment as we bring to a close this week's program with Mr. Eddie Cross. Welcome back to those who have been with us from the beginning, and to those who are just tuning in towards the tail end of this week's program. We are with Mr. Eddie Cross, and we are discussing the end of the month midterm statement unveiling by the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtuli Ngcobe. And of course, when we're going for the break, you were talking about corruption, how pervasive it is in Zimbabwe, and the two things that we need to deal with. And what are those two things that we need to deal with to make sure that we nip this in the bud?
Right. Well, first of all, you need systems, which are going to, for example, if you're importing 100,000 tons of wheat through the border, and you should pay 5% duty, the computers at the border should compute exactly what is due. So I said to CZI the other day, why don't we take what we physically import? Because we know what we import. Let's calculate what it should be paid. And when we discover how much money is missing, and my personal view is it's hundreds of millions of dollars, let's look at how we close that gap. The way Zimborders has done Beitbridge Border Post has been a giant step towards that. So people bringing stuff to the border must pre-clear. And there's no human involvement there. It's pre-cleared by the computer. And when the truck drives through the border, the computations are already done. And the company must pay the duty before the truck proceeds. All right? But when you get compliance, when you get vehicles going through the border without any documentation, if that is picked up, the people involved must be severely punished. And then these people who are running around with lots of money, and you know who we're talking about, giving away cars and so on, they have to explain, where does this money come from? How are you making this money? What's involved? And that must be a public process. And if he can't explain, then the money should be taken away from him. It's not his. It's theft. These guys who are bringing fuel into the country are not paying duty. All these new filling stations, all of these new filling stations, all privately funded, all independents. What's going on? Okay, so we should do that.
Maybe it is a response to the expanding economy.
No, not at all.
So it's just creating an
Not
industry
at all.
for
The fuel business
fewer retailers.
The fuel business is grossly overtraded. There's only one explanation for this. Everybody tells me it's money laundering. Okay, but let's leave that aside. And I think that government should concentrate on this. Zimra is very aggressive. And I mean, this recent decision to tax Delta Corporation, I'm not sure exactly what it was, $70 million in tax. And Delta took it to court and they lost the court case on a technicality. Please, you kill a blue chip company like that because that'll kill them. That'll kill them. They can't compete with the other people. bringing in beer from Namibia and guys competing with them locally, if you're going to hit them with that kind of tax bill. And we know that 40% of households in Harare are not paying rates. And the municipality has a list of people, political people, who they cannot charge rates. Why do you think our urban infrastructure is so rotten? Why do you think our roads are so destroyed? Because I had a discussion yesterday with Chitungwiza Town Council, with the councillors. They haven't paid their staff for 4 months because they're not collecting enough money. You know, and it's not that the money isn't there. It is. People have money. People have money. Look at all the houses that are under construction. That's all cash business. There's no bonds here. So I think that the minister has a Herculean task, but he needs to tackle these issues. On the issue of the number of taxes, NASA is a tax. The AIDS levy is a tax. And I think it's time. When last did you see an audited set of accounts from the AIDS Council? What are they spending that 3% on? That's 3% of your salary, 3% of mine. What are they doing with that money? You take the Standards Association. They have so much money in their bank account, they lend money to other parastatals. Isn't it time somebody had a look at these things and said, how much money do you actually need to provide the service that you're, and why are you collecting so much money? If you take the Environmental Management Agency, when they were given the right to keep the fines, previously if they fined someone, the fine went to the Ministry of Finance, and the Environmental Management Agency had to run on a budget provided by the national budget, and they would have to manage that property. Now they can keep the. So what do? They fine people. They find businesses, they find mines, and some of their activity is so aggressive, they actually close businesses down and chase away investors. Now, we have got to put a stop to this madness, and I think that the job of the minister this time is not so much balancing the budget and dealing with fiscal niceties and so on. It's restructuring government financing completely. The other thing which I'm very concerned about, there are 300,000 state pensioners. How's that possible? How's that possible? When last, I've been a pensioner, a parliamentary pensioner now for 7 years. Not 1 year have I been asked to prove that I'm alive. And that might be because they know I'm alive, because they see me on your show. But, Guthrie, Old Mutual, every year I have to go with my ID and present myself at a counter and say, I am Mr. E.G. Cross, and I'm still alive. But the government, I guarantee you, if we called for proof of life on 300,000 state pensioners, half of them would not be there anymore. I guarantee it. And then you take the size of our civil service. I don't know what they won't tell you what the civil service size is, but it's huge. It's huge. At independence, our civil service was 67,000 people, including the army. And today, it's several hundred thousand. And you know, when we did the audit of the civil service during the GNU, we found ghost workers all over the place. We found people who had no job description, had no job. And, you know, these are the kind of things, and we're not paying our professionals properly. You know, we've got 80,000, I think we've got 80,000 head teachers, headmasters. A headmaster is the key to a school. If you don't have a good headmaster in a school, you don't have an educational institution. He's the key man. You know that.
Yeah, so I will leave it here.
Yeah. There's so much to do.
There's so much to say, there's so much to do.
That's right.
So it is a Herculean task for the minister. But you believe that it is not just about talking about the fiscal issues, but it's restructuring government financing.
Yes.
and dealing with things that should be effective.
How they raise their money and how they spend their money. It's
Sure.
the same situation. Every businessman faces the same thing.
Sure. Hopefully, I'll see you after winter
Zakanaka.
when we get back to the normal days where we don't have to worry about all this cold around us.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to add other than to say I hope you are keeping home. I hope you are exercising. And I hope that whatever you do that showing by exhibiting a lot of decorum. This show, we always interview people and behave and show decorum. Good night.